I'm looking at you over there, so you get to see my profile. Um, so I want to go over cross-hatching, and I posted some examples on titanium. There are pretty good examples of cross-hatching. The way that I approach cross-hatching is slightly different, maybe from other people's cross-hatching, but I'd like to explain exactly why I choose certain directions for cross-hatching. And what I try to do is I try to find a most efficient way of using fewest amount of marks to describe the turning of the form. So when I deal with cross-hatching, I think about how I can make, first of all, what it is. Cross-hatching means hatching marks, putting several marks in relationship to each other that suggests some kind of a surface. If I make these marks like I did just now, I made it a little bit thinner, then goes to a little bit thicker. And I can make it from lighter to darker. It suggests a flat surface and perhaps some kind of a change in there. So we can use crosshatch marks or hatch marks in this case. So they're in a lot of academies, they teach how to use hatch marks to do the shading because it's more effective a way of covering the surface than trying to do shading with a tone, trying to make an even tone across. You can do the same thing in a lot less of a time if you just put a couple of marks together. And then you can overlap them and make another layer of marks and start making it a little bit darker, right? And you can add the third layer of marks and so on until it starts getting to the tone that you're trying to get to. But it's done more efficiently that way. But I also want to think about how to make not just hatch marks, but suggest the turning of the form. We talked about cross contour, how to describe something that's more or less round, let's say a simple cylindrical form. The cross contour would be going across that form. And some people actually do the cross hatching by going across. So you can literally just take hatch marks like this all the way across and then start turning them this way and all the way to coming this way, and suggest that angle of the ellipse following that idea of how things would go across the form to suggest the turning and following this form this way, right? So we really basically suggesting this movement around the form that way. The other way, though, I think more efficient way, and that's what I try to suggest, which is a little bit more counterintuitive, is to do the same thing, but instead of going across, I would go along the form. So I would think about what the form is doing and how it's turning towards the edge. And I would make something like this. Now I used a couple of tricks in this, but you notice that it really did take a lot less time to do something like this, which is a plus, right? Anytime we draw. I did use more variety of lines, from lighter lines to darker lines towards the edge, which suggested that same sense of change that we are created as, I did put the lines a little bit closer together here and made it a little bit farther apart in the middle. What that suggests is that towards the edge, the planes start getting closer and closer. And, you would often notice that even on my arm, for example, obviously the light is coming from the top, so the bottom does get a little bit darker. This area starts getting darker, but the same happens on top too. As it comes to the edge, the shape starts to get darker. Obviously, that's a lot of hair in there, but even on my bicep in here, this catches the most light. I should say it's not that it catches the most light because it's not facing towards where the light is coming from, but this area reflects the most light towards your eye, while this doesn't reflect as much light. It's because this plane is faced in such a way that the photons bounce right off towards your eye. And as it comes to the edge, it does get a little bit darker. So we're showing this idea of turning of the form. And that's what we're trying to suggest. So you can do that with a cylinder. You can do that with geometric forms. But you can also do it with organic forms. So, if we create some kind of a more organic bean shape, for example, we can still think about how to turn it towards the edge. You imagine where that most reflected part of the form would be, and then I would think about how to go away from that form. And I usually start from the inside of the form rather than outside of the form. I don't shade it from here in, but I start with the light line. And then as I go towards the edge, I start changing my pressure towards the darker surface, right? So I can create that gradation in there. And I'm going for the longest line first. I could have made it a little bit longer all the way across. And here I would probably go something like this. And you would do that same way to every edge. So you would go and show how this is turning towards the edge. You can create a little bit of overlapping. But the idea is that we're just practically shading towards the edge right there. In here, there's a little bit of a compression. So this is where the lines will follow around this round form and around this form. And the cross-hatching will also kind of come to that compression looking area right there. Which you can see how that form starts to have a turning surface. And that's basically the idea here. A lot of other people would go with cross-hatching across. So again, if I just draw some kind of a bean shape, a lot of people would try to do some kind of a cross hatching to suggest a cylinder, or maybe even something else where they would suggest both directions. Which is still possible, right? It still suggests some kind of a sense of turning surface because we're using curved lines. But look what happens if I use straight lines. And that's pretty much something that you definitely don't want to do. If I use more straight lines, even if I'm following the direction, it creates a flattening effect. So it suggests that this section right here doesn't really turn in any way. it's facing kind of more directly towards us. So some, at least every part of it is similar. You know, every square in here is very similar. There's no change that happens. Where in here, we're dealing with these kind of diamond planes, and they change as they go deeper into space. Maybe they get smaller. And here we have very similar square shapes that are kind of facing towards us. They all have similarities, so it suggests flatness. So in all of our drawings, we're trying to figure out how can we avoid effects that suggest flatness and make something that moves us around the space, around the volume. You see how this is connects itself to the mannequinization, or this gestural approach to the line making, how we wrap the lines around the form, like we did around the eyebrows, for example. You know, how we wrap things around the base of the nose. This is why I like cross-hatching so much, is because we get to do this type of line many times over and over, and we relate each line that we place to the next line. So we're practicing this sensitivity of how our lines relate to the form, right? We get to really explore it with so many chances to really get to feel for it. Now, you could cross lines, and I did the suggestion that you could do some crisscross cross-hatching, but I would suggest that you avoid doing 90-degree cross-hatching unless it's some flat surface that you're trying to suggest. So instead, if you're dealing with something and you're trying to figure out how things curve, you might end up with some areas that are spreading out, your marks spreading out, and some areas it would get closer, right? You're really showing a lot of changes. You can show that some areas start getting maybe darker, and you're kind of suggesting how there's a grid on the surface, and as it turns away from you, like my fingers, they have certain distance between them, but as it starts to turn away, they get closer and closer together with a lot more overlapping, right? So they start getting less space in between. And if you adding another layer of cross-hatching, I suggest you don't go across all the way, but suggest kind of a similar but slightly different angle. And again, some kind of change between these lines. And what happens is that we have a jump between one layer of interpretation of the surface to a next layer of interpretation of the surface, and we're moving with it. And then I might add a third one and say, and we're starting to create some kind of a continuation with that change of surface. So cross-hatching is kind of a gestural, moving, rhythmic line that travels across the face. So I got this head over here that has no features. And I'd like to think about the head as some kind of a form before I get to the features, right? So how can we draw something that's pretty organic and soft like this? Let's think about it. Let me get a new page here. Maybe I can fit it here. I'll fit it right here. I'm just gonna look at it you guys see a little bit of it, that's fine. So I'm going to look at this and think about how we have a head that's has this mass where the brain would be, right? And then we have another form that attaches, overlaps like this. There's quite a bit of overlapping and has a very round jaw, somewhat round, I should say. And then we have an eyebrow that overlaps this a little bit, this forehead, and then maybe a cheekbone that comes from behind it a little bit. So we're dealing with overlappings quite a bit. And then we have a mouth barrel that maybe overlaps that also. Now we're dealing with some kind of layers of round masses, right? So how can we describe that? Every bit of curved surface that I see on this side, I can suggest and draw it on the other side. So if, as I draw this, turning towards the surface, maybe I can give a little bit more. I can think of it on the other side and suggest it as a couple of repetitive cross-hatching lines to suggest that connection between the two. So it's not linear like we did with contour line, but it actually works better on something that's very soft and organic, that has this very subtle transition. Sometimes we have to suggest it as several lines. Same thing happens with a brow line here. Let's say we have a brow over here. Where would we find it on the other side? Maybe something like this, suggesting an arc and a connection between the two. Then in the middle, we're going to have a center line, but the way that we can show that is by showing the this part of the bridge of the nose, a couple of lines there, and a bit softer on this side. So we're starting to develop that. As I go around the form of the nose, it's a lot softer. So it's like a Voldemort, and here we can suggest a couple of lines to suggest both sides of the nose. So here's what I'm drawing, right there. So same thing with the mouth. Here's the maybe a little bit more shadow towards the bottom. And where is it on the other side? Let's suggest it a little bit like this. The chin coming to the edge, showing the turning like this. And we can suggest that the jaw kind of comes like so. In here, we can suggest that maybe there's an opposite turning that happens to this portion over here. And then if I look at the forehead and start looking for hints of shadows. So I have a plane going towards the edge on this side. Where would it be on the other side? This plane right here would be over here. So we can start suggesting it. It's also round, very subtle. It's in the light. So very subtle lines, but what it does, it connects the right side with the left side, and we're thinking of that structure like we're hugging it. And that's the good word that I like to use, is that we're really hugging the form on both sides with these lines. So we're grasping it. So in this case, here's the eye socket over here. You will command maybe something like this. I do have the eyeballs inside, so maybe if we show the overlapping of the eyeballs on this side, maybe I can start suggesting it a little bit on the other side, or that similar right side of the eyeballs. And the form starts to emerge out of that. I can add a couple more lines over here, turning towards the bottom of the skull, maybe suggest a couple of layers of this, and we're took a linear drawing into something that has a little bit more form to it. But it's all about sensitivity. And if you notice the way that I draw, it's a somewhat a large size. And I like to draw at least this size or maybe a little bit bigger. You know, I probably could have made that line, the top line, a lot lighter. So I can really talk about how different the values of these lines are. Because I'm trying to show off the change, the gradual change from lighter to darker lines. And for that, I need to have quite a bit of sensitivity. That's why I like to oftentimes start with the light line. I feel that light touch, and then as I go towards the outer edge, I start applying a little bit more pressure. And I am holding my pencil, you know, sometimes I hold it this way, but for cross-hatching, I oftentimes hold it this way because I do draw curved lines. Remember, we try to avoid drawing the outline that's made out of a bunch of curved lines like this, where we're going back and forth trying to find where that line would be. Instead, we're trying to draw, think about where it would be, and then try to get a nice, powerful, forceful line with energy in it. But in this case, these short lines, it's fine. It works really well if you hold it with a writing way. I am holding it kind of farther back, so it allows me to draw a big enough line. And then I try to draw the lines, but now I need to figure out how I can draw the lines in all kinds of angles. And if your hand is not used to drawing crosshatch marks in this direction, in that direction, in this direction, you might want to practice it, right? Because your muscles don't want to do it until you stretch your hand and your muscle memory get used to drawing these directions. So does this make sense to you? I hope I covered it. I'm not sure if I'm rushing through this or not. I usually spend a little bit more time on this, but definitely think about going the long side of the form. So what would be in here? We got a potato of the cheekbone that's kind of like this. So I try to go with the long side of that potato to describe that form. We've got a sphere, so it doesn't have too many longer or shorter sides, but this probably would be the longest side that goes towards the shadow that I can go towards. There's actually an interesting other way of doing cross-hatching that I discovered as I'm looking at one of my favorite YouTuber who teaches in Russian Academy, Alexander Aryshkin. I don't know if you guys can find it, but it's all in Russian, so I don't know if it's going to be helpful. But the way that he does the cross-hatching, which is quite exciting, he makes the form and does the cross-hatching in both directions. Instead of going in one direction and picking up the pencil every time, he does it by going in both directions to save time. And in fact, this is how they learn in Russian academies, and probably before that. And what it does is that it has an organic qualities, and we're dealing with two layers at the same time, right? This layering effect. You know, he does have parallel lines in one direction and then parallel lines in the other direction when he draws from down up and from up down. So there's two layers. Does that make sense? And that kind of creates a more organic way of going across the form. There's another way, this is not a perfect circle. So another way to shade this circle, the one that I suggest would be to take that core line that I just drew and draw it across the form this way. It works also, right? I don't know which one's better. You can use combinations of going completely parallel at all times or going diagonal. This is diagonal. So if I drew this on a cylinder, let me draw it on another cylinder right here. So on a cylinder, you're kind of dealing with drawing a core shadow rather than the turning of the form. This is turning of the form. And this is more dealing with the core shadow. I hope you guys are familiar with what core shadow is. So it's basically the light effect, right? So we can imagine that the top of the sphere is in the light, and there's some reflected light coming from down below. So if I use the core shadow logic on the sphere, then it's not going to be light. There will be a core shadow somewhere in the middle. And I'm basically using these semi-curved lines that suggest that everything is arcing downwards on the surface, but I'm using a more diagonal angle to it. Right. Again, let's do it again. So we can do a similar thing with straight lines also, which is fast and also efficient, right? Which one's better? I would probably not use too much combination of all of these together, but in some places you would need a combination. So I hope that makes it I hope that explains it. So use less of this. No. And more of the lines that travel around, the gestural lines that travel around the surface. All right. It's kind of like calligraphy. Something like you would find on a dollar bill, you would see how the president's faces are being treated. But we're trying to show a lot of sensitivity, and it requires kind of an immediate response, where in the calligraphy, that's calligraphy actually, but I don't know exactly. But there it seems like it's been analyzed very, very carefully, thought through. We have to do some careful observations, but we got to do them really fast. You have any questions, guys? So let me see if I can add something here. So I'd like to draw a face. This one. Let's try to draw this face over here. Pull this down a little bit. So I'm going to mark where my parts of the head would be. So, I apologize for this. Going to take a little bit time to draw this, but hopefully that explains the process a little bit. Here's the top of the head, maybe. Here's the right, left side. So kind of block in, the gestural block in. I'm going to make it very light at first to figure out my major masses. Always hoping that my demo is going to turn out nice. So I have to focus and these first steps are very important. Everything needs to have the angle and gesture to it, right? So we want to really consider these initial qualities carefully. I'm getting into details a little bit too soon because it's so big that while I'm drawing this, I might not really consider the rest of it. If I really look at it, the face should not be bigger than this. So I'm probably making this a little bit too big. So focus. We got a face, cheekbone coming from the back. The chin is in front of that. And we're drawing these round shapes, just like on this head that I did. We're trying to figure out the large forms, large relationships. Here is this eye socket. Here it is on this side. I can draw a couple of lines to suggest that fullness of the form. I'm hugging the form. Here's a couple of lines. And that allows me to actually not commit to the outline or draw the head with the outline per se. I'm drawing gestural parts. This kind of looks like an outline, but I can arrive at the outline because I can add one more line and make the outline move a little bit farther. Or I make this line stronger and say that's where it ends. And the other lines are kind of echoing and going farther. So this cylinder right here, I can look at the direction of the hair, but I can draw it as a cylinder like this, right? And it suggests that turning towards that edge. And I can make it bigger or smaller. I can hide my mistakes that I did just by absorbing it into cross-hatching. Still talks about the cylindrical quality. We don't necessarily have to follow the direction of the hair. Here, I would follow the direction of the hair just because I'm trying to make that more spherical as it wraps around. Doesn't have to be always the same way, but this is how I interpret it in this case. Here's the forehead. Here it would be on this side. So I'm feeling this forehead. Here's the hairline. Center line of the hair. We can start thinking about maybe this shadowing effect over there. And here I can think about how this is moving towards the edge. All right, I'm getting a little bit scared here. I gotta get braver. Let me find where the halfway point for the nose would be somewhere here. The nose is somewhere like this. Light lines gives me placement, but I didn't commit to anything, so there's no need to be scared. So here's one edge. Here's the other edge of this shoulder. Here's the mouth barrel. Again, I'm not drawing features. I'm just drawing this form. So that makes it less about trying to get the lines in the right spot, but it's more about trying to find that whole form in the right spot. So I should have probably gotten these shapes sooner. Hoping that I'm getting that right. Beautiful forms of the hair. So that's not often you get that, but the hair can have all kinds of curls and forms in them. We want to treat it as forms. So cross-hatching helps us to look at it more like forms than just some shapes, flat shapes, versus more kind of curvy outlines. That coat blanket. Today is, of course, Columbus/Indigenous Day. That's why I picked the subject. I think it's pretty fun and quite suitable. And there's no copyright on the photography that's 60 or more years old, so I can use that too. So kinds of pluses to this. So I arrived at that sense of form by suggesting several lines as they move towards the edge, right? And I also picked the girl's face because she has very subtle turns of the features. It's not like, let's say, if I picked a man like this, it's very easy to draw these folds right on a guy like this. And it's easy to see all the subtle forms in there. On her, we see forms. We could see forms, right? But it's much softer. Now, most of you are very young and your faces have very subtle turns. So I just wanted to use something that has that subtlety in there. Here's the cheekbone, something that we don't really pay attention to much, but it's very important. So here's the cheekbone on this side. And because it's just shading, it's pretty subtle. Here, how it continues to the bottom of the sinus pad, where the two come together, right? And that bottom of the sinus pad right here is also the edge of the mouth barrel. And then, at the edge of the mouth barrel that's over here, we will find the corner of the mouth. And then if we think about the center of the mouth, pretty much set ourselves up to find where these parts of her features will be. And then I can start adding a little bit more contrast. But that's the beauty of it, is that we're finding it in a very gradual way. And if you get used to this, allowing yourself to find it slowly through these gestural explorations of forms, then I think you will connect the features to the underlying form a little bit more accurately. And wouldn't that be great? So here is the eye socket here. So forehead, it curves out. while the eye socket goes in the opposite direction. And when this side ends, we end up finding the eyeball. And the eyeball gonna have a little bit of shading underneath. So we're really describing that sphere in there, and then we'll get into the details of the eye itself. And we have the eyebrow in there. Allows you to also understand how different forms connect to each other. And, this is where it's difficult to figure out how to change and turn the surfaces. But you see the flows of all of the different parts in there. Where one thing ends, something else starts. It has a lot of rhythmic movements all around the form, the surface of the form. Here, let's maybe get a little bit more tip of the nose. So let me find the curvature for the base of the nose. Notice that as soon as I put these two lines right here, it all of a sudden gave me the inner corners that brought the structure of the nose all of a sudden. Didn't really draw the nostril, but kind of suggested that nostril. I'm going to draw the curves going this way to give me the limits of where this form would be in the front. And that gave us a lot. And then what's this box of the nose right here? How high does it go before it narrows down maybe a little bit? That really builds the perimeters, the outer placement of these forms, kind of bracketing where it is located. Here's the nose, left and right. Let's hug it. Here's a little bit of a curvature on the outside, and we can see that base of the nose, how wide it is in there. Perhaps it goes around like this, and we can see how this cheek goes around over here, making her face a little bit softer, rounder. And now let's show the overlapping. The cheek comes subtly in front of the jawline. So let's find that the jawline comes from behind that. And the chin comes in front of that. The subtle overlapping in there sets up the space so much. That's what gesture lines, they're all doing the same thing. They're just showing what's in front, what's behind. Here's one line, so we can think about what's happening on the other side. This is the top of the eyelid. And this is the eyelashes and the bottom of that top eyelid. I'm not sure if I got that right here. And I maybe made that a little bit too dark. And I could have waited a little bit longer before I commit to some really dark lines. And my problem also is that I'm looking at my drawing maybe too much than I'm examining the reference. So I'm committing to my ideas of what should happen on the paper before I keep on borrowing it from the reference. So I do make a lot of mistakes in there. But the great thing is that it still looks like form. It doesn't look like that person exactly, but it does look like it has a volumetric symmetry of some sort. Okay. Sounds like I'm making all kinds of excuses for poor performance. I'm sorry, guys. Failing you here. So in here, we got some turning towards the edge of the form. I am turning for larger areas and softer lines to the candle way of holding the pencil. So I can use my shoulder. Any opportunity to show the overlapping, we should use that. I don't even know what's happening down below, but I'm gonna make it overlap. So some things are almost like making things up, but you can slow down and try to get them as accurate as possible. So let's see. Very interesting lip shape. It's a V or M shape on top. And a little round shape on the bottom of that sphere. And it's interesting to show that right here, the contrast between the edge of the lip and what's happening down below is not very strong. I probably made this line a little too strong here. But you could respond to what the lighting is doing in there and just demonstrate the form. You see how the chin is a little too flat comparing to what I did to the bottom of the lip? So we got to bring it to the same level of turning of the form so it doesn't appear to be flat. So I'm going to turn this a little bit. I'm going to turn this towards the edge. Few lines. That's why I want to keep them long too, so we can do it very quickly with fewer lines. Similar thing here. And we get more round, kind of a rendition of this form. Maybe the opposite curvature for this space under the lip. And even though, like the problem with photography oftentimes is that the shadows turn to black and we don't see much information. Well, if we're describing this hugging forms, we can imagine what is happening to the form. This is going like this. The opposite side would go kind of the opposite way to hug this form. Right? So even if things get too dark, we know what's happening on this side. Let's describe the foreshortened version of it on the opposite side. It allows you to draw things that we might not even see in there. Well, draw and understand. how the surfaces turn. So I hope that explains it. And if you have questions, please do ask. And I will try to explain it further. Here I move that outline a little bit. Couple of lines for the shadow in the ear and what's happening to these shapes in there. Let's make some lines a little bit stronger. Gradually we can get to stronger lines. Definitely the hair would have a little bit more contrast. Maybe the eyes. A little overlapping to the hair right there. All right. I think I'm gonna leave it at that. I'm looking for the areas that still appear to be flat, and I'm trying to bring it closer to the sense of the volumes that I see on the face. Maybe this area right here is a little bit too dark. But we're not describing shading per se. So I see the cast shadow in there, for example, but I'm not really that focused on copying the values that I see, but rather with cross-hatching, we're trying to suggest the form, the turning of the form. Does that make sense? It's not shading. I hope that came across. We're not trying to copy the values that we see, but rather explore the form, the turning of the form. Here, I maybe cross this over to suggest that whole potato, how the cheekbone attaches to the temple.